We will be going live in 20 seconds. We are live now.
So hello and good morning everyone. I would like to welcome you all at a new exciting session at the SciComm Synapse. So at SciComm Synapse, we are dedicated to bridge the gap between science and society by providing a curated platform which brings scientists and students together and makes science inspirational and approachable. Today is the very first session of the next experiment, which is a flagship initiative of the SciComm Synapse. It is a live interactive podcast where we invite top scientists and researchers to interact with students and aspiring researchers to share their challenges, insights, and ideas. So for our very first speaker, I would like to welcome Dr. Samatha Mathew with us. Dr. Samatha did her PhD from CSIR-IGIB, where she worked on elucidating the mechanism of long non-coding RNA in maintaining blood vessel integrity using a zebrafish model. And later on, she did a short stint at CSIR NIIST at Thiruvananthapuram as a senior project associate. And currently, she is working as SciRio as a project lead. SciRio is India's first science communication company. So, Dr. Samatha, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Kriti. I'm really, really glad I am part of this venture of yours. I see that how excited all of you are to talk about science, but I think today's session we'll be expanding it more to science communication and how it can impact the society. It's not enough to do science; it's also necessary to talk and disseminate the science we are creating in our labs for the larger public good. So I'm really glad to be here and I hope to have a great discussion today.
Thank you. So today's session will begin with a Q&A from me to Dr. Samatha, followed by her presentation, and we'll wrap it up with an audience Q&A and feedback form. So to start the session, Dr. Samatha, my first question to you would be, what motivated you to transition from a traditional scientific research career to project lead in science communication at SciRio?
Yeah. So I think it is really where you do your studies that really affects you. So affects how you think and how you go about in life. So I was at CSIR-IGIB, Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, Delhi. And CSIR is this wonderful organization which really takes into account the fact that we need to be talking about science. We need to be bringing the society into the, into the walls of the ivory tower they're all working in. And we should really invest into the next generation of scientists. It's not enough that we do our science within in these closed walls. So I was really influenced by how much we get to talk about science and interact with students and interact with lay public. So I'll talk about that I'll be able to show you some examples where I was getting multiple opportunities to talk to the public, and it sort of influenced me. And people around me started telling me that, you are really fit for this field. You should go into science communication because you can excel in this field. So it was both me exploring things and also my mentors and my peers telling me that I should explore science communication. SciRio was an opportunity which came really unexpectedly. There was a position open and I just attempted. And Suchita Champak, she's the founder of SciRio. And we had connected over Twitter maybe earlier, and she immediately took to exploring if I can work with them. Although I came from an academic background with little industry experience, she was ready to experiment. So I got a chance to be there, and we can discuss about this.
Thank you, Samatha. That was a very thoughtful and wonderful answer. So moving on, my next question is, during your PhD at IGIB, you worked at long non-coding RNA, right? So how did that research experience shape your way of thinking about science communication and connecting with broader audience?
Yeah. So my PhD was on long non-coding RNA biology, but I was part of a group which is a larger group which worked for human genomics, right? And I knew that I was at the end of that pathway of working from for human diseases to once if we identify a human pathogenic variation, how do you convert it to a translation? For that, you need to be modeling those diseases. That's where I was working for developing models. So during that time, it was really, you always think about from the beginning, okay, if I'm doing this work, how will it affect the society? And we had multiple instances where we had to interact with the public to get samples. And I was also part of the larger Guardian network, which is the genomics for rare diseases India Alliance network. And all of this sort of uh, indirectly affected how I approach science communication. Like I said, it was always the alma mater and the environment which opened up my mind to science communication. We were always allowed to experiment at CSIR-IGIB, and I'm really, really glad about that.
Thank you, Samatha. Moving on, as someone trained in molecular biology, what challenges did you face when you started to um, uh, face complex research to broader audience? What were the few challenges that you had to go through?
Yes. So I think this is something every science communicator goes through, right? Uh, we know that this is the science, but to explain it to the public, we have to sort of simplify it. But it is a very fine balance. You should never dumb it down to the point that the real science is lost. So the same thing, when I know that DNA makes RNA makes protein. When I start my research presentations, I start with the fact that this DNA makes RNA makes protein is wrong. That's how I start when I start my research talk. But I cannot say this to a common layperson, right? Because I'm going to confuse them. So this was always a balance of how to explain, and this balance was something I had to learn over time. Like I have to explain the complexity, but I should not say something which is inaccurate. So that is something every science communicator has to keep in mind, and it has been the same for me. It is a challenge always to think whether, in terms of molecular biology, is this is right or wrong, but is it too complex that my audience is never going to connect? So there is a balance which has to be struck.
I wholeheartedly agree with you at this point, because as researchers, we sometimes forget that we don't have to communicate science to just fellow researchers, right? We also have to communicate it to people who are non-academic or who are not in a science background. And communicating clearly to them is a huge task compared to fellow researchers.
Right.
So next question by my side would be, can you share an example where effective storytelling made a big difference in how your work or someone else's work was received by non-scientific people or a broader audience?
Yes. So I already said that I was part of a team which worked with human genetic diseases. And this is a very sensitive topic, right? When we talk about this, it can really influence people. And it also comes from inside that you feel that, okay, I'm part of this larger group which is working, which is directly having an impact on the society. So that way, I think whenever we have talked about rare genetic diseases and we were communicating around that. For example, the Indigen project was led by our team at IGIB. My boss's name is Dr. Sridhar Shivasubbu and his close collaborator, Dr. Vinod Skaria. They were both the sort of the leading PIs in this project. And as a part of that, the rest of the team, all of us had to communicate to the public about this. And I'm sure that each of our colleagues, every peer who has gone out and talked to common man, they could come back uh, convinced that, okay, we maybe we got at least one more sample. so that we can add to the larger consortium of the human genomes done in India. So yes, I was really lucky to be part of such a group where our science communication had an immediate impact.
Thank you, Samatha, for a very well thought of answer. So the next question would be that SciRio is India's first science communication company. And owing to that, what were the unique challenges that you faced working in such a pioneering environment, especially coming from a research background?
Yes. So I already mentioned that I came from a completely academic background. All my science communication efforts were done within an academic system where nobody thinks about how many people read my article or what is the direct lead generation or what is the capital involved or how much money does this bring back. So when you move into industry, that is something you think about. So SciRio is a great venture where Suchita is very passionate about bringing science and society together, but it is also agency which has to work on timelines. We have to deliver to the clients, and we are answerable to the clients. So that is how we think differently when we are in industrial system. It's not only about doing the science communication. Definitely, the principles are same. How can I make the science as palatable to the audience as possible? But we also think about what are the returns for the company or the client who are trusting their it's sort of a marketing process, but how they are trusting us with their products and their story. How the best can we bring it back to them? What is the ROI for the efforts we are putting? So these are the things I sort of learned at SciRio, which I'll again talk about, and I have tried to summarize those learnings in my talk.
Thank you, Samatha. So, moving forward, looking back, do you feel that your research gives you a sort of edge in science communication over those who are, say, purely trained just in science communication?
So I think there are pros and cons for everything, right? So there is a report by SciComm Think Labs from Fast India, which I will be shortly showing today. They did a survey and asked this question whether SciComm training in science communication itself helps you to be a better science communication personnel or as a professional. So most of the participants of the survey agree that science communication training really helps you. But I would say that a PhD has its own training sets, right? It is not like whatever you get trained in PhD is not transferable to the industry or even science communication. So I have felt that especially where projects you need data analysis or you need to really understand topics in depth, my PhD training helps me better. Like for me to just if somebody gives me a very complex topic, it will be easier for me to go back and trace out the literature and know how to distill the contents in there compared to somebody who is only trained in science communication techniques wise. But that is again doesn't mean that I know all the tricks of the trade of science communication. I have my own, so I am learning on the job. So it works both ways, I feel. Yes.
Okay, so both of the job profiles have their own benefits and their own cons.
Yes.
Great. So, in your view, how can science communication play a role in bridging the gap between researchers, policymakers, and general public in India?
So this is sort of a rhetorical question. I mean, we have to understand that as researchers, if we keep our knowledge to our own circles, talking only in our own jargon, publishing in academic journals which are behind paywall, it will never reach the public. And the best example is COVID-19. What the kind of science communication which happened was very very important to have immediate impact, right? So if every researcher kept to themselves what they found in the genome or what variants were identified, it would have never helped the public policy to be modified immediately according to what findings were happening in the lab. Science communication is very, very important for the fast translation of what is happening in the lab to a policy stage. Right. So there is a STIP 2020 policy in India which was framed for especially this cause, that how can science and society be bridged as fast as possible. So there is no question that if science communication is important, it's only that how organized we are. Currently, our country is still in the a discovery phase of how well science communication can augment each of the research fields or policy fields, and that organization is what is missing. And of course, all of us have to work together to get there.
Agreed. Because in during COVID times, as you said, there were a lot of pseudo-scientific kind of propagandas and explanations going on over social media and so on. So yeah, science communication will definitely help in eliminating those things. So my last question to you is that as researchers, as PhD students, a lot of our time goes into, kind of communicating science, because in posters or we are required to network. So what would be your advice for PhD students or aspiring science communicators who are in academic research? So what would be your advice to help them to see a path beyond academia if they are hesitant?
So this is an interesting question. It is really like a calling. I mean, like I said, when I entered PhD, my path also seemed like I'll take a regular route of going into research. But it was the opportunities which presented myself, and the opportunities I grabbed and I volunteered for, which sort of made my mind clear. Okay, yes, this is also a path I could follow. So if you are a confused science communicator right now, I hope from this interaction, what you can take away is that uh, it is not as easy as it seems. Of course, all of us science communicators come on talks and say that it's very exciting, very great, but there are challenges like in every field. It's not just that if you go into research, it has its own hurdles, and even in science communication field, especially, there are some things which are beyond our control. But if you're really passionate about it, you should go ahead with it. I have tried to put together how science communication is not like a science communicator role. That is not the end of it. You can be diversify into a various amount of fields. You can experiment, and now with AI tools, you are not limited anymore. That okay, I'm a writer, I don't know how to uh, talk on a podcast or something like. Now you can try out different formats. So go ahead and try out. If you are feeling really strong about it, you should volunteer. Volunteering is the only option right now. You do some internships, network, find good science communicators who can guide you, who can tell you the truth of the path, what is lying ahead. And definitely you should try out. But I'm not saying that. That is also one more statistic I had to share today, is that most of the science communicators in the country don't do it as full-time job. They just do it as a part-time for their passion. So if you find it difficult to take it up as a full-time job, you can still do it alongside whatever you are doing right now. And then eventually you can, if you are feeling confident, you can branch out into science communication completely.
Thank you, Dr. Samatha, for these very thoughtful and well explained answers. Now we can move forward with your presentation.
So we'll have question answer at only at the end of the talk, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining on a Sunday morning. And I've just tried to put together some thoughts on how my journey has been, because each science communicator's journey is very, very distinct and different in our country. It's not like everybody picked up a pen or even a drawing pad and started science communication. Everybody has their own motivations of start and their own starting points. So I started off as an academic person. That means I have done a PhD in biological sciences. I could have taken the traditional path, but I had enough exposure in science communication. I had built a portfolio for me to also explore science communication. And today I am a content strategist and project lead at SciRio, India's first science communication company. So where did it all start? My alma mater is CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, Delhi. On the left, what you're seeing is a presentation, like sort of my final presentation at IGIB. And I was working on this topic, which is very difficult to explain actually. If somebody asks me what is my PhD topic, I usually hesitate before telling them because I have to explain each term on my PhD title. So one of the breakthroughs as a science communicator happened to me when I wrote an entry for the Avasar DST competition, and I won the award as one of the best stories in the out of 100. And from this complex title, what I tried to distill it was into this title called as a stripy hand to get the flow. I tried my best to, simplify this complex science of long non-coding RNA, vascular biology, and how to use a zebrafish model to understand human biology. So getting this award was really a validation as a SciCommer, and it was one of the best experience of getting validated also that okay, I can talk about my science in a simplified way which can reach the masses. Now, like I already mentioned the last session, I had multiple chances of talking to the lay persons or the students who are really into science during my stay at IGIB. I was one of the leading volunteers. I coordinated a genomes or DNA isolation stall at the India International Science Festival in 2016, which is at the beginning of my PhD. But this was just one event. There were multiple events where I was part of different open days, different activities, and all of that sort of gave me a confidence that okay, I can go beyond ivory tower. So we know that in the ivory tower model of academia, we just confine everything. We talk between scientists. Everything is published in academic journals behind paywalls. If a common man would try to understand that what is even going on, what do scientists even do in this country, it's very difficult for them to understand. So it is the SciComm approach which can open up a bridge between the scientists and society. And in the current era of digital media, we can use different formats to connect with the audience. And this makes science inclusive instead of staying exclusive. Now, one of the examples I think was the most influential or very satisfying for me was how I ended up becoming an author of a children's book, which talked about genomes for students, like school students. And this was a concerted effort between a teenager, a seasoned scientist, and myself as a SciCommer. This is a book called as Genome Jones, which has structured about 50 animals and the details of their genomes. We published this with WWF India. I'm sure at least some of you have heard about WWF. And this was a great opportunity for me to test out my, my abilities as a SciCommer. These are the authors. You can see that it was a teenager boy who led this venture. But through this, what I could learn was that beyond the traditional outreach of just having open days, we can also think about how to condense this into written material. And there are very few children's books written from scientists' point of view. So this through this venture, we could make SciComm accessible and age appropriate. And we try the best to make this visual book, and we try to make it as engaging as possible. And because we published it with WWF India, we had a sort of a relevance of the environmental issues and conservation issues. We could sort of connect with it, and their audience would have really benefited from our effort of condensing what do genes mean for animals. Now, I have talked to students, I don't know, hundreds of students during my stay at PhD, and a PhD at CSIR-IGIB, and I think it is a really, really satisfying experience. I spoke to Poothi Katpalia, who runs Science Bagels and now Vigyan Venjan. When I spoke to her, I told her how between all the hurry and all the everyday experimentation, it was the open days which came once in a while, which really opened my own eyes to what my science means and why it's important. So here on the right, I'm holding a flow cell from a NGS machine, right? So a child who has seen this flow cell will never think of DNA as a double-stranded helix anymore, but as something which flows through these machines and get read through a sequencer. And why it's important? Because this is all publicly funded. All of our science was publicly funded, and it had to really go back to the public in some format or the other. And like Kriti pointed out, there is a lot of misinformation, especially happening during COVID-19. And I also talk about that in my later slides, how it is very important for us scientists to spend some time to combat this misinformation. And of course, it will feed back into the science policy and inspire the future generation. So I had a chance to be a part of this compilation by India Bioscience, which is a compilation from different science communicators in the country. I gave a chapter called as Scientist Journey of Navigating Science Outreach. So if somebody is interested, they can go back to this resource and check out how different science communicators take different approaches and how best you can take science to the society. Now, how do you condense data into and convert it into a dialogue for the public? So it was during COVID-19 which I really could experiment with this. People who know me, many of people who know me are, they know me from Twitter. And during the pandemic, I really tried my best to communicate science. And one of the crowdsourcing things I had done was make this poster and then ask people to, can you please translate it to other languages, which a lot of people volunteered for. And I'm really grateful for that kind of a community that we have in our country. I also tried, a vernacular communication in Malayalam, which is my mother tongue, through Luca, which is an online science magazine in Malayalam. And through this, I always tried my best to combat misinformation. And I'm really grateful to Dr. Vinod Skaria for giving me these opportunities. It was also during this time that at least some of you would have heard of Talk to a Scientist. And it was during this time that I got a chance to be part of Talk to a Scientist. And it was really transformative in the sense that multiple people reached out to me after seeing this talk. And it really changed even my own confidence of how well I could communicate science to the society. Now, if we were to talk about what are the challenges in doing science communication, it is about the jargon, right? Like Kriti said, we all know how to talk to our own peers. We can talk about p-values and, whatever is troubleshooting and those kind of words. But how do you remove those technical jargons and talk to a common person and make them still understand your science? And if you were to write something, it's easy to write something and put it behind a paywall, but how do you make it accessible for a layperson? And how do you make sure that if tomorrow somebody is taking your content and making it into a public mass media, it is not distorted? So your viewpoint should be very clear on that. And best way to do is find the right analogies. Storytelling is one of the strategies in science communication, and you have to it comes to you with practice. And best way to put across data is to show it through infographics. And for a country like India, multilingual outreach is very, very important. And every time you're thinking about communicating, think about who is my primary audience. So one example where I can think about is this course, which is on YouTube. again coordinated by Dr. Vinod Skaria. It is bioinformatics for schoolers. So I am not a bioinformatician, but I had the opportunity to open this course with an introduction to genetics and genomics. And now, while I was making this presentation, my thought is, how can I make a 8th standard child sit there for 25 minutes and listen to my talk? And how can I make all these complex topics as simple as possible? So if you're interested, you can go back and look at it and let me know how well I have done at this. But I really enjoyed making this presentation because it was really, think about how a standard student wants to understand genomics or not, and how well can you convince them to it. Uh, what I already alluded to is how you can use different formats in our current situation. Like, we have all the digital media possible, we have all the AI tools accessible to us now. So make the story as visual as possible. Now, a lot of people are taking to podcasts, so you can also adapt to podcasts. And interactive engagement right now, what we are trying to do, which we can also do for science topics per se. And when you're making written content, make sure it is as accessible as possible. So when we talk about varied formats, what comes to my mind is one of these attempts I had made. So at the National Postdoctoral Symposium 2022, there was an option of doing a science slam presentation, and I was the only person who attempted it. And you can see that I got on the stage with the guitar, which I didn't know how to play. But that was the format I tried, so that I could get as much of my audience to get involved. And I think most, or the entire audience, was with me when I talked about my long known coding RNA biology science, but through a simplified mode. So always when you're talking to audiences, tailor your format in a way that they'll engage the most. So let's now, these are my experiences, but where do you go from if you're a person? So Kriti's last question, if you're a person who knows that you want to get into SciComm, but you're confused, what do you do? So just have a open mind and know that there are different ways you can go through. It is not only science writing in an academic system, but there is a larger ecosystem out there who would like people who can really simplify concepts, science concepts. So let's talk about science communicators. Maybe, yes, academic institutions now, most of them have people who are dedicatedly doing only SciComm. But again, these are limited uh, opportunities. But there are also science writers who are hired by companies, larger companies. So those are the kind of opportunities which are there. If you're into science journalism, that is great. That is also one option. Um, and I already mentioned academia, but also scientific societies, like especially some societies which have also publications. They also want people to coordinate talks across the country or even the world. So those kind of opportunities are there. Policy, of course, you can get into science policy. There are NGOs and civil societies who would like to encourage education for people. So that is something you can explore, which expands to general curriculum development and everything. Uh, like I was telling, there are some industry opportunities where people understand the value of having a science communicator. Of course, most industries have marketing teams, but there are also industries who understand that it is important to have a person who's completely trained in science to be part of their marketing team. Social media managers are now out there everywhere, so that is something you can explore. And of course, there are philanthropy trusts who would like to have science communicators on board. So these are just some examples. If you are ready to explore, there are multiple opportunities where you can diverge into and explore your passion. Let's talk about India as such. And for talking about that, I've referred to this report, SciComm Think Labs report, which was put together by the Fast India. And the key themes here were how to, build, if we were to build a SciComm, ecosystem in India, how to go about it. So it is divided into 4 chapters. About 16 science communicators, leading science communicators in the country got together and put together this report. So I suggest all of you to go back and look at it if you're interested. I just pulled out one interesting graphic from here, which is it is a survey of about 60 participants, and what I want to show here is about 38% are unpaid SciCommers who took the survey. So this is the reality in a way of the SciComm industry, is that most of the SciCommers are still working out of passion, and this is something our country needs to really work towards. Which brings me to the challenges in our country that. So if you were to opt for academic role, and if you were thinking of, okay, if I join this place, I can stay there forever, that's not going to happen. Many of the SciComm roles are still project-based or grant-funded, which means that you'll have to move from time to time. And of course, pay disparities. You understand that maybe even if it's a corporate marketing role, it's going to be much different. Versus even in within academic circle, if you were to take a traditional path, your pay would be different. Many of the SciCommers in the country are freelancers, but of course, with freelancing, the issue is that you are not having a steady flow of income. But there are people who really love freelancing. I'm not saying that it's something bad, but what I mean is that that is the reality. Like if you are turning to freelancing, it will always be a challenge to find new work, and that will be something you have to continuously, be working towards. This is something I've heard from even senior SciCommers, that uh, once you make a document or a report, your name just goes in the background. So unlike academic circles where you get an authorship on things, sometimes in SciComm, you might not really get that kind of recognition. So that is there. And the most recent challenge is rise of AI tools. With all kinds of content creation, uh, people think that content creators can be replaced by just using AI tool. So the only thing you can do is know that AI tools are your assistants, and make best use out of AI tools, and keep a continuous tracing of what kind of best tools you can use for your own upliftment as a content creator slash science communicator. And one of the issues in our country is that we don't have many formal trainings or science communication courses in the country. That is something again discussed in the report. So best way to do is right now is take as many opportunities as possible when it's available to you, and keep an eye out for the best tools you can use to upskill yourself. Now, my lessons from SciRio, I'm not going to talk about how my science communication got better, but like I already said, I came from an academic background where nobody asked me how many people read your blog, or how much money, or what is the return of investment from uh, doing your science communication. But at SciRio, what I've learned was that depending on, I learned something called as content strategizing, right? Depending on who my client was, I learned how to define what kind of content we put out, and that turned from even infographics to interactive workshops. So that is a range of type of science communication I had to learn to do at SciRio. And it is not only about creating the content, it's about how do you talk to them, how do you make sure that they are happy with your content you're creating, how can you make your content better. So these are the kind of continuous engagements you have with your clients. And of course, content creation is still a part of it, and you have to keep yourself up to date of each topic. Like if I have 3 clients, I have to know the recent developments in each of those clients spaces. And we have SOPs and content calendars and key performance indicators and all of these trackings in place so that we deliver our best. And this is nothing which is I am trained for in a lab, right? In the lab, I'm trained to maybe give presentations, talk to the public in an open day setting. But here I had to learn much more things. What I've learned is that I have to work within timelines and constantly upskill myself to be relevant. Now, if you want to jump into SciComm, and what would you start with? So that is what I wanted to talk about. So storytelling is an approach which has to be adopted in science communication as well, and it, as visual as possible, you make them, and it will be more connecting with the audience. You have to understand your audience really well and make sure you use the latest tools for communicating your science. And whatever skills you're learning in academia will be useful. You will know, you will have your own viewpoints or your own tricks to communicate science uh, beyond academia, even if you are trained in academia. So never doubt that if you have transferable skills, you definitely have them. Uh, this is a image I created in 2018. So when everybody was taking notes in a in an academic setting or academic conference, I was making graphical abstracts. Some were even just cartoonish, and these were just doodles. But it was 2018, and I could have never thought that I'll go into science communication. But science communication might start as small as this, right? So when you're thinking about starting your SciComm journey, you can start small. Just write about something. You volunteer for open days or any kind of any student interaction. You will find your own spark in there. And of course, networking is very very important. If you feel that okay, I could do something in this space, find other people. Now it's easier with social media. You can reach out to people. Twitter is not that great now, but of course, LinkedIn is there and you can connect with people and collaborate as much as possible, volunteer as much as possible. Your scientific insight is very, very valuable. Please bring it to the world. Um, and I think the thing which really, really affects or really gives satisfaction to most science communicators is that we know that we are making an impact, even if it's one child who is, getting inspired by your how you talk about your science. That is a difference. So here is an image of a child who traveled from Bangalore to Delhi to spend a day with me just because he saw my talk on YouTube. And I don't think that kind of a satisfaction working in the lab has given me for 8 years, because somebody felt so connected to me because of how I communicated science. So we are really molding the future when we are communicating science. Thank you all for joining me in this exploration, telling you the stories. I hope it was useful. If you want to reach out to me, these are my social media handles and my email. SciRio's work you can definitely explore at our website. We are also on LinkedIn, but this is our website. I'll be happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Samatha, for a very detailed explanation about how not only you can transfer from a research background to a science communication background, but also the pros and cons that science communication even holds. So it was a very great talk and a very detailed one. So I would like to request Somalia and pass my mic to him to go ahead with the audience Q&A.
Yeah. Hello, Samantha. It was really a very nice talk, and there are many good questions as well. So, ma'am, first question which I would like to take, what is the most misunderstood concept in your field, and how would you correct it in 60 seconds?
Okay, it's easy for me. So, like I said, I am a non-coding RNA biologist, which means that the first thing I always say is wrong is the central dogma of biology. Okay, so this is also something once I did a Twitter thread on, because it is very important to communicate that we are taught that DNA makes RNA makes protein, but that is not true, because there is a whole fraction of RNA which is almost 70%, which does not make protein. So what do they do instead? They work as RNA itself. They have the role of modulating, or how to, for example, if DNA is an instruction book which says how to make your body, then RNA is the copies which are made, and then from the copies there are building blocks of the cells which are made, which are protein, right? So now what do these instruction manuals do? You think that they do only have the information for making protein, but they also have information to tell that, okay, DNA should be read in a different way, or the protein should be, going here in the cell or going there in the cell. So these are the kind of different ways the RNA acts in the cell. So this is my simple attempt.
Yeah. So, ma'am, the next question which I would like to take is how should we communicate scientific uncertainty without undermining public confidence?
Okay, this is very important. So uh, there is, we have to sort of make people understand that uh, we are not like the final word on something. So I think this is something people realize during the COVID also, right? When we talk in a language where we say that, see, this is final, then that sort of makes people public, and then we change it. Then public feels that why did they change after they saying that this is final? So the uncertainty, we have to say that we have to um, say that, see, we have this information at this point of time from these many studies, but this could be limited. We are limited by this way. So I think while communicating a result of something itself, if we can talk about the limitations and what are the future possibilities, that can sort of help the public understand that, okay, this is not the final result, or this is not all of it. There is still which we need to understand. And I think trying to treat your audience at your equal level is something good. We should not be like condescending when we talk to our audiences. We have to make them understand that, see, we are also exploring things, and we'll communicate to you as and when possible. So that kind of a you know dialogue would be really helpful.
So, the next question is that how do we ensure inclusive science communication that reaches marginalized or under-repressed communities?
Yes. So this is very, very important in the sense that one specific example I can think of is when the double masking mandate came out from the PSA's office, right? Initially, it was in English, but then it had to be translated into as many languages as possible so that it could reach the masses. So science communicators struggle with this even now. Most of us are trained in English, right? I can talk about my science in English very easily, but the moment I had to write it in Malayalam, I was struggling. It's the truth. And especially for underrepresented and marginalized people, we have to understand that there is a factor of a science communicator also has to be empathetic. You have to understand that they have certain insecurities, or they also have a different language in which they are spoken. So you have to keep your mind open. You have to understand that it's science is not only about science. We are also part of the society. So to communicate to marginalized people, I can think of we talk about science in more number of languages. That's definitely more accessible, and also the formats we choose. I think now WhatsApp is one of the formats which is easily accessible to many people. So that, but then radio is probably one of the formats. If we can choose, we can reach as many people as possible. Yes.
So, the next question is, um, science communication as a career, would it be good in terms of as a part-time job or a full-time job in India if we talk about?
So I try to touch upon the different aspects of science communication. When you think about science communication, don't think of it as a role with, say, science communication officer. So maybe that would limit yourself. If you look at the different opportunities in different industries and fields, probably you can get a role which is full time and which will support you financially. This is something I think from research background also we start talking about the passion. If there is passion, there is no need for money. That is not true. You need money also. Okay. So definitely, if your financial status allows, sure, you can try part time, but I would suggest that you find opportunities which allows you to work full time. There, like I said, there are industries and markets which would pay you for you to communicate science for their marketing teams. So you will have to go through different profiles and understand. You have to identify those posts. I cannot say that okay, go to this website and you will find SciComm jobs listed out where you'll sort it out. No, that's not true. Not, or right now for our country, it's still not true.
Yeah, ma'am. So one question is more, which recently it came popped up.
Mhm.
So what aspects must one keep in mind when serving content strategy roles in companies?
I think it is just, you mean that is, I don't know if the person is really available for more clarification, but I'm assuming they are asking what all a person asks when you're applying for a content strategy role.
Yes.
Yes. So I think it's really your portfolio that would matter. Like I said, I had the opportunity to build a portfolio over my PhD time where I wrote for different platforms and I had enough outreach experience. So your portfolio would really matter if you can show that you have communicated in different formats, and your digital literacy, what all tools you are very familiar with using. Those are the kind of things people would expect. I especially remember when I was applying for medical writer roles in companies, they expected certain tools of how to manage content. Those are the kind of things they'll ask you. Like, it's not only your written experience or outreach which matter. Sometimes it's all the tools that you are aware of that will really make the decision.
Yeah. So thank you, ma'am, for taking up the questions. And one last question which I have in my mind, that this is my personal question.
Mhm.
So when we go for our defense for our work, that is
Mhm.
also a science communication.
Yes, yes.
So ma'am, at that time we know uh, all the answers. It is our work, so it will be we are easy to defend. But when we present in front of a jury, some questions are there which they ask we are unable to defend. So my ma'am, why it happens?
Uh, it really is person to person. There are people who read a lot beyond their own scientific category and everything, and it's really not when they ask those questions, they really don't want you to answer perfectly. What they're trying to look at is, can you think through the question? Okay, so your PhD training is something where you, any problem which is put in front of you, can you break down the problem and think through that problem and think this could be an answer? Okay, so even for a PhD defense, if a jury asks you a question, always attempt it. Don't think that I don't know the specific answer. You think about all the things you have read till that point, and you try to attempt that question from your training, your, the knowledge you have assimilated over 4 or 5 years or even more than that, and you will be able to attempt it. That is, yeah, that is my answer.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So, thank you, Dr. Samantha, for taking some time out on this cozy Sunday morning to present the science communication and the tips and tricks to get in there. And I would also like to thank our audience to join us for this exciting and beautiful session. So, before we end this session, I would request the audience to please fill out the feedback forms. And I thank you again, Dr. Mathew.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
so
joining.
much. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. Thank you.
So much, ma'am. So we are signing off. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye.
हेलो सौमिल्य भैया, ये आपने इप्सा जैन वाला डाल दिया। अरे क्या